Hey, how we doing today? So, my name's Neil. I perform as Hardwire Spears. Wanted today to start talking about the different kinds of studios that you can start with when you want to get into recording your own music. Now, hang on. This was my first studio. Yeah, so computer to record onto, making lots of noise, an interface, and a mic. Of course, there were also guitar stands, mic stands, lots of cables, and speakers and headphones. I don't have the speakers that I was using back then. Had those as well. And I recorded an album, full-length album, about 12 years ago using that studio. That's what I started out with. No, I actually started out with tape and big mixing consoles and expensive mics at the college that I was studying at the time. That goes back a long, long ways. But, that's kind of where I got my start in recording. Then over the years, I've played with 4-track cassette recorders, and which belonged to a friend of mine. Thank you, Ted. I loved those days. Loved playing with the gear, and then, when digital audio came out, I started playing with that. My first album was done with GarageBand on a Mac, which is free, still is. It's still a great program to get started in. So, I'm going to start this series a little different than most of the ones that I've seen on YouTube, talking about what you need to start with music. Because it doesn't talk about what you need if you're a particular kind of performer and songwriter, or however you're going to record music, whatever kind of music you're going to record. Let's talk more about specific uses. Let's start off with what I started out as: a singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar, and vocals. That's today's talk. As mentioned before, you need a mic to get your voice and instruments in with. Then it goes to an interface, which then goes to your computer. I'm not going to really go into which DAW, which digital audio workstation, or DAW as many people call it, to go to, because there's so many different choices. There is another video on my channel talking about 4 of the major ones that you can get into. For a singer and guitarist, I highly recommend an interface with 2 inputs. Now on here, these are the inputs. Let's go way close. Now, that's an XLR input with the ability to put a 1/4-inch cable in. Very handy, very useful. It also has controls for how much gain you're putting in, how loud it is going into your DAW, as well as how loud to listen to it on speakers and on headphones. Very useful. Interface, mic. Now, if you're playing guitar, I highly recommend a second mic. Now, you could use another one of these. By the way, this is a large diaphragm condenser mic. Condenser mics are more sensitive, and they pick up a broader range of sound than a dynamic mic like this, which, if you've ever performed on stage, you've probably used one of these. It's an SM58 by Shure. I've got mine labeled, hence it's got the white thing on it. These are ubiquitous on stages. Almost everybody is using them or has used them. Could use a 57, which is very similar, slightly different and less of a ball. This is more for instruments. But I like this. This is a small diaphragm condenser. It's better for acoustic guitars than a dynamic mic, and tends to be more favored for getting details of acoustic guitars than a large diaphragm mic. So, singing into a mic, you'll also want a, sorry for all the noise, a pop filter. Goes like that. And then as you sing into it, what it does is as you're breathing out while singing, some people are very prone to popping their P's or their B's, etc. Some people aren't as prone to that, but the two things that this does is prevents bursts of air hitting your mic, making a big explosion sound. It also keeps you about the right distance away. Instead of getting right up on top of the mic, keeps you just a little bit more away, and that creates a little bit more open sound than right on top of it. Not to say that you can't go right on top of it. Think of people like Frank Sinatra, who when they sang soft got really close, so you got that really immediate sound. And then when they sang louder, they got further back. Another trick for that is to sing normal distance, but when you're singing louder, just turn your head so that the proximity effect, which is getting more bass when you get close to it and more treble when you get further away, you get the same sound, but you're not directing it right in. So when you're singing louder, it sounds the same, but you're not bursting this. So with the small diaphragm, now this is an AKG C1000S. I bought for $100 in a pawn shop. It's actually a really nice mic. So when you've got a guitar, the most used method for miking an acoustic guitar is find the 12th fret, and then put your mic 6-8 inches away, and then tilt it towards the sound hole. And that gets you pretty much a great sound every time. Now you can mess around with that, and your guitar might be a little different. You might want to move it closer to the bottom of the guitar, or closer to the top, or a little further away, a little closer. Find what works for you. Experimenting is by far the best thing you can do to learn how to do it well. So experiment with it. Don't be afraid to try different things. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, if you're using a home studio, it's not costing you $100 an hour. It's costing you 2 minutes and a little bit of hard disk space. So give it a try. So for singing and playing guitar, I like to have both happening at once, because most of us who sing and play guitar use both of those to play off each other. And we don't quite get the same feeling when we just sing or we just play guitar. So, you know, and sometimes we just can't do it one or the other by itself because we're not used to thinking in that way. Recording both is a great idea. So going into from your interface into your computer, you're going to record into a DAW. Now, for consistency's sake, you want to play to a click track, which some people love, some people hate. It's best to get used to doing it. So if you've never played to a click track before, make sure it's loud enough to hear without bursting your eardrums, because you are going to listen to the click track through a pair of headphones. Now these are the HD 280 Pro from Sennheiser. They're about $130 Canadian. Yes, I'm in Canada. Just a little under $100 in the US. These are great closed back headphone, and they actually sound really good. Now there are some that, like, there's various pro headphones for monitoring and stuff that a lot of pros like to use that are $300-400. These will work very nicely as a good starting point. So you're going to listen to the click track through your headphones so that it's not going into your mic. Now, some people like to hear themselves through their headphones, and that's great. But I tend to find that I don't sing quite as with the same timbre that I like to get when I can hear myself. So I tend to put one earphone off my head and just listen to the click track with my other ear. That works well for a lot of people. You'll see a lot of people doing that. You can direct monitor if you can add in a little bit of reverb and a little bit of compression just to make it sound more like a finished vocal. If you're using a computer with USB 2 and your latency, which is the amount of time it takes to get from the microphone through the interface, through the computer, back out to the headphones, that's called latency. It's that whole circle. If that takes longer than about 5 milliseconds to 8 milliseconds, it's going to sound like an echo to you. So you might not want to directly monitor and hear yourself. Some interfaces do allow you the ability to hear exactly what's going on and there's no latency, which is great. So that's another choice. Experiment, learn about whatever you buy and use it. Now this one that I just showed you is a PreSonus. There's lots of PreSonus, there's lots of different choices. For the singer-songwriter, I do recommend 2 inputs. More if you think you're going to do other stuff later. But look at some of the other videos that I'll produce to get into those situations. Finally, when you are mixing, making the sound final, in the final mix, it's called, you're going to want to probably listen on speakers. Now you can listen on headphones. It is doable and some people do it and are very successful. Most people find that when they mix on headphones and then they put it in their car, or they put it on a stereo, that it sounds completely different. So you might want to look at getting speakers so that you can hear how it's going to sound in a speaker environment. The speakers you buy can be anywhere from a couple $100 for the pair up to thousands of dollars. You, as a singer-songwriter, probably don't need a couple of $1,000s. You probably just need a basic pair of monitor. They're called near-field speakers, near-field monitors, and they're meant to be on your desk really close. Now there's lots of YouTube videos on how to position them, how to get them set up right in your room. That's great. Now one other thing that a lot of the tutorials that I've seen online about doing a home studio don't talk about is the treatment of your room. And what does that mean? Well, that means that you know how you walk into an empty room and you talk or you snap your fingers and you can hear it echoing around a whole bunch? That is an untreated room, and what treatment does is cuts down those reflections. So there's various types of reflections that we have to be concerned about. Our immediate reflections, which is, from your mouth or from your guitar, hits the wall, comes back. That's your first order reflection. And then there's when it bounces off a couple of walls and then bounces around the room. Depending on the size of the room, what happens is that your initial sound wave might, much faster than my hand, but goes back and forth like this, right? Actually, it's more like this, but it's represented by a wave. So when another wave joins it, if they're in synchronicity, if they're synchronized, it's a better word, that's fine. But when they start doing this, what's going to happen is that this is going to cancel out and this is going to cancel out. And so you lose a lot of sound. And if they're just a little different, what's going to happen is that you're going to have good sound at 1 millisecond and wrong sound at another, and it sounds metallic, and that's called comb filtering. So you really want to be careful about that. So you might notice behind me this big blue object. That's a moving blanket. There was a video I saw online. Guy compared a whole bunch of different materials for the absorption of broad spectrum of sound. And what he found was that tea towels, 4 to 8 layers of tea towels, was actually the best. You know, the terry towel type of towels, bath towels, not tea towels. Anyways, you can't see it, but on my back wall, I've got a picture frame with a canvas painting, canvas photo on top that I then put a whole bunch of towels in behind, and that works really well. But I only had so many towels, so I found these moving blankets locally. They're made in China. Sorry, I hate that, but they're cheap. They're $15 a piece, and they're huge. Those work really well. I put those up in a band rehearsal room once, and it was amazing how much the sound was more controlled and less echoey, and we had better rejection of feedback and all that stuff. It's not a bad choice. You can also use studio foam, this stuff. Sometimes it's like little pyramids, sometimes it's the waves. This is good for high frequencies only. It does not cover bass frequencies at all. And so for vocals, it can actually work because they tend not to get super, super low and not loud enough to build up too much resonance on the bass frequencies. So this can work. And I was actually in a band, we covered the walls with about 300 square feet of these. And it actually worked pretty well. Again, muddy bottom end for a full band, but it was better than nothing. And we got them super cheap used. So now the most bass frequencies tend to build up in corners. Right angle corners is where they tend to build up. So hanging a blanket in a corner or having a bookshelf covered, filled with books can actually work very well. Or you can get or build bass traps which go into the corner and really soak up the bass frequencies that build up there. I have some more of these moving blankets up in the corners, and it actually works very well. I've measured this room with a measuring microphone and looked at what frequencies were jumping out, and so there's a couple of frequencies that are still kind of jumping out, but way better than it was without any kind of treatment. Now, most people prefer to use rock wool insulation. It's designed to absorb frequencies, and they build a 2-foot by 4-foot frame and put in some of this rock wool and then cover it with cloth. And that looks really nice. It looks pro. They're super cheap to make yourself. Look it up online in the DIY, make your own room treatment. Those work fantastically well. One of these days I will actually go that route. But for the moment, I'm going to use these because they work very well, the moving blankets. Those are kind of the areas you need to be concerned with. The gear, microphones, interface, computer, something to hear it with, your room treatment. But whatever you get pales in comparison to having good songs and good performances. And that's one of the beauties of home performing, is that you can take a month to get the vocal just right. Record three tries at it, and then listen and go, I like this part, I don't like this part. Maybe I'll try this. Oh, I'm really liking this. I'm going to do that more. Then do it again 3 times. Do it until you have a great performance. You're going to be way above a poor performance recorded in $1 million studio. I think of Michelle Shocked, her first album, long time ago. Some of you don't know who she is. Her first album was recorded around a campfire with a portable recorder. It went on to become actually fairly well played on radio, and played tons of times, and she made some money from that. Performance over gear. I do recommend getting at least a certain level of gear. Now this particular mic is in the $200 range, and it served me very well for a long time. I then went to a couple of better mics. One of my favorites, which I don't have in here, is the Rode NT1. Fantastic mic for the $300 range. And I've heard some producers say that at the $300 range is when a mic gets to be noticeably more professional sounding. My actual mic, which I'm using, sorry for the little extra sound there, is an RT4 tube mic. It's about an $800 mic. I found used for $180. Killer deal, and I love it on my vocals. So I've been mentioning what works for me in my studio, but your mileage may vary. Mics especially. If your voice is different than mine, which it probably is, then a different mic will probably be the best choice for you. Same thing with guitars and your environment. Sometimes if you can't treat your room as well, then the choice of a condenser mic that isn't as sensitive might actually be a good choice. The Shure SM7B, that's the one, is a great choice because it can be really localized. You talk into it. It is a little darker sounding mic. It doesn't work great for me, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work great for you. Now it is a $500-600 mic, depending on where you get it. So, if that budget isn't for you, there are less expensive choices. Now, where do you buy your equipment? If at all possible, buy from a local store, from somebody that you can get to know. I can't tell you how many times being able to walk into my store and ask questions and try out gear has both saved me money and cost me money because I got to try it out. But I got to put it in my hands and see how it works. And when I've had trouble, then I can go right to them and say, hey, can you help me with this? And they usually can. So buying local, even though it costs you a few dollars more, will save you money in the long run. It'll also let you work with people and network with people who can help you in your career. That is not a bad thing and worth the extra money just on its own. So do try, if at all possible, find a local store, work with them, buy from them, support them. They will help support you. So I hope this is useful for you. I hope that you watch some of the other videos. Do press the subscribe button. Should be over there if you're on YouTube. Also hit the like button. Hit the bell notification so you get more of these videos when they come out, which should be pretty soon. And I'd love to talk to you again soon. Have a great day.